All right, welcome back to another episode of Phoenix Edge. This is an RPG and gaming news podcast. My name is Hat.
And I'm Eric.
And I am Stan.
And today we are going to be devoting the entire episode to ranking or picking out our favorite RPGs of the last decade. Clearly, we're going into 2020 and we just want to give a conversation on the RPG landscape over the last decade and really just pick out some of our favorites here. Again, we're doing favorites. We're not necessarily doing best because we're people and we have lives and we may have not played all the games that came out in the last decade, but we would be interested to hear some of the games that you want to pick. We've created a Discord channel within our Discord server, and there's a link in the description to join that Discord server if you haven't already. And you can go on there and kind of rate your games and pick your games and conversate with us, or you can just leave it in the YouTube description. But other than that, we're going to be covering these games. So before we jump into that, let me just address the fact that we're doing this podcast a day early. That's because we're going into the holidays. Monday's the 23rd, where we all got something going on around that time. So we're just going to do it a day early. We're going to be taking the following Monday off, again, because of the holidays, and then we'll return the next week after that. So no podcast next week, but then we'll have a podcast the following week. So I'll just take this moment also to point out that we are media partners with RPGFan.com. If you have not checked out RPGFan.com, I highly suggest you do. They have RPG news, podcasts, reviews. They've been around for a little over 20 years now. They have a YouTube page where they're putting out video reviews as well. And we're media partners with them, so we're helping them out with different things, and they're helping us out as well. So we strongly suggest you go check them out. You can click on podcasts on their page and check out some of the other RPG podcasts that they have listed there. We're listed there as well, so we're really happy to be affiliated as media partners with RPGFan.com. Go check them out. And other news, some of the things that we got going with the podcast and just the YouTube channel in general. I just uploaded a video today of basically my non-spoiler reviews of the entire Season 1 of Witcher. I got home early from work on Friday, and then I got in bed and just watched the entire season in one sitting, and then I got up in the morning and watched, 2 or 3 episodes over again just to kind of clarify some of my thoughts. But I went ahead and gave my non-spoiler thoughts on the show and tried to phrase it in a direction where if you haven't watched the show yet, I give some suggestions in there on how to better enjoy the show, because the structure of it is kind of confusing, but it's still a pretty good show. So make sure you go to our YouTube channel. There will be a link in the description if you're listening to this in the audio version, and you can check that out. And we'd really appreciate if you go in there, check it out, give it a like, and let me know and let us know what you thought. I know, Eric, you said you've only watched 2 episodes now, but it seems like you enjoyed it as well. So I'm sure it's
Very good show so far. I really love the action in it, especially it's satisfyingly violent content. I'll just say.
Yeah, it doesn't hold back, so it's really enjoyable. But really, go check out my review. I'd really appreciate it. Moving on, we are going to have a Crisis Core discussion next month. We're still figuring out the date, and then after that, we're still planning on having a Final Fantasy VII PS1 discussion, getting us prepped for the Final Fantasy VII remake. And we are also looking at doing some impressions on the podcast, just initial impressions of the DLC for Kingdom Hearts that's coming out soon. So we're really excited to get to that, but we just want to keep that on your mind and ask you to stick with us, subscribe, and check out our audio podcast as well. So that way you can keep up to date with everything and you don't miss anything. But I think we're done promoting everything here. Let's jump into our favorite RPGs of the last decade. So we're going to start with 2010 here. And again, these are going to be our favorite RPGs, not necessarily the best RPGs, because we haven't played every RPG in the last decade. Maybe one day we'll get there, but not today. But Eric, why don't you start us off here and give us your 2010 pick and why you picked this game for your favorite RPG of 2010, released in 2010.
This one, I'm going to start off probably being a little controversial here. This is a game that when I played, I was actually having pretty low expectations of it. I was thinking it was going to be one of those lower end Square Enix titles because that's kind of how I always felt with the Drakengard series. Like they were good, but uh, they always felt like low budget and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And but this game, I absolutely fell in love with. It's the very first Nier game.
Mm.
And while the gameplay isn't the most solid thing ever in this game, it's very average to below average in terms of the combat. Um, the the story, the characters, the world are so ridiculously good. I fell in love with it like instantly. Like even though this game has really oddball mechanic stuff, like even like literally making you read light novel in the forest to and answer these questions. They throw a lot of oddball stuff at you, but you just love this world and character so much that you're willing to look past things like that. And there are good fun moments in the gameplay, and and this is it definitely has its Yoko Taro touch, and there are certain things in the game that just messes with your head. I absolutely love it. And this is the game where if you pick a certain ending, um, then it actually deletes all your data, but there's a narrative reason why it does it. And that's why I was like, I didn't fall for it when the Automata came. I was like, I know what you're going to try to do here. And I mean, it's a really damn good game. I really hope they do like a PS4, uh, PS5, like some form of re-release of the game. This is technically what they call Near Gestalt. This
In
is the
Japan,
version where he is a father trying to save his daughter who has a disease
Mhm.
slash curse. In Japan, though, they have what's called Near Replicant, and the
Right.
story's slightly altered where it's an older brother, and the character here is actually like a teenager
Mm.
trying to save his little sister who's cursed. And I think they did that to try to make this appeal more to the West. I'm not like it's a weird decision, but I actually do prefer this more. I find the idea of a father saving a daughter a lot more interesting because you've kind of heard the um, brother saving sister thing kind of before. So I'm kind of glad it worked out this way.
Right.
But it's like, did it need to happen? No, but I'm glad it did happen. But that's my 2010 game.
Yeah, it's that's a game that I need to go back and check out. I've played Near Automata, the other game there, but I haven't actually played that game, so makes me curious. I want to go check it out. Stan, what do you have for your 2010?
So I picked the same game, Near for PS3. Um, yeah, Eric touched on a lot of things already. One thing that I would add that I think is actually my favorite part of the game was the music. The
Oh
music
yeah,
in the game is just phenomenal. It's like a big portion of the soundtrack is kind of like a mellow but like also haunting kind of feel to it
Hmm.
because the world is kind of in a crisis. It's kind of like a post-apocalyptic type of setting, yet
it's
it,
like it
it
is and isn't.
yeah, it's still very colorful, right? Like the world is like kind of um well, at least certain parts, like there's kind of open fields and the grass is still green.
It's
It's
like
not
it's
like a Fallout
redeveloped
game or
after a
something.
certain period of time. I guess
Yeah.
way to
Yeah,
put it.
it's an interesting game. Like it is definitely rough around the edges, right? At certain points. And there's a lot of gameplay ideas kind of shoved in there. Like Eric said at one point one of the quests becomes a text adventure and has no graphics whatsoever. It's just you're going through the narrative all of a sudden in text and there's like kind of a little puzzle part there you have to give the right answers. And yeah, um that was definitely my favorite game for 2010. It's not the most well polished game. Like if you go back and play it today, like Eric was saying, it's kind of lower budget title, but just the atmosphere and the music helps a lot with that the game has, is like, just, you won't forget it, like if you go and play it, you know.
What I like about the fact that it's a PS3 game, though, is right now you can get PS3 games for like dirt cheap. I mean, they haven't really hit the nostalgic time yet, right? So you know, you go to a used video game store, they'll have like buy 3 for $15 and all sorts of deals. So you can get, you know, entire collections of games for super cheap. So I think that given the, you know, the popularity of this, the name, right, I think I want to pick it up now and just get it in my collection and have it there before it starts being a little bit more expensive, you know, 10 years down the road.
Hopefully PS5 will have PS3 backwards compatibility, and you can
just play it on there.
Go through the library. I don't know if it will. That's a subject for another time, but
right.
That'll be a nice opportunity to go back to PS2, PS3 games.
That would be amazing. I agree. For me, I picked Radiant Historia. Now, I didn't play this game when it initially came out. I did play it later, but generally, I don't appreciate time travel stories because, you know, as cool as they are on paper, usually the story runs into problems that kind of like makes me scratch my head a little bit. Also, additionally, with the gameplay, usually that creates problems because they have to create situations in which you can't currently go back in time because whatever reason they made up to fix an issue, right? So just the fact that you can travel through time, it usually creates so many issues for me that makes it a little lackluster. And the only game that really did it well, I felt like before, was Chrono Trigger. And when I played Radiant Historia, I feel like it took the Chrono Trigger model of time travel and gameplay, and then it like boosted it up a notch. So what I mean by that is if you haven't played the game, you are able to go back to any point in time and replay that portion of time. Now in Chrono Trigger, which I'm comparing this to here, is similar in that after you beat the game or even within the game, you can go back to different time periods and correct different mistakes. But this game will let you go back at any point in the game and just really just rerun through different scenarios, try different dialogue options. And it really blends a lot of this together because, you know, a lot of times you have to go through one timeline to get an item. Then you have to go back and play that portion of the story again, but choose different dialogue options. And, you know, now that you have that item in your possession, you can now move the plot line and another timeline forward. And it just adds a lot of variety and a lot of strategy to progressing the game that I felt like really made the fact that there is time travel in this game a plus. So I really, really enjoyed it. I mean, I thought the battle system was great. The music was great. I didn't play the remaster where they charged you to use the old art. I know that was kind of a sour subject, but I thought it was a great, great game. So did y'all?
That is a fantastic game. That is easily one of the best RPGs on the DS.
Yeah.
And arguably even 3DS with the remaster.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to feel overwhelmed or the story was going to feel disjointed. Constantly having to go like backwards and then go between two timelines, two split timelines. But it was so amazing how it kept such a cohesive narrative through the whole thing. Like you still were 100% like understanding what was going on in both timelines. And I'm so amazed they were able to pull off something like that. And the characters were engaging, the story was very interesting, and where it all led to at the end if you get the good ending.
Right.
And make sure you do everyone's like side quest thing. It's like it's so satisfying. Like I would easily rank that as one of the most satisfying endings ever in a video game.
And I think, well, first off, I totally agree, but also I think the ride to that point is just really well done because, yeah, you have to replay certain parts of the game, but the dialogue is it's not long-winded usually. Usually it's like right to the point. The pacing is perfect. And I'm just like, anytime there's a situation where I have to make a difficult decision, I'm just excited to, you know, stop at that point, save, and then go through one decision and then go back and play through the other. It just, I don't know, it's just a fun and interesting way to progress through a game. So I would like to see more games that take that philosophy and kind of run with it. And I'm sure since then there has been that I've kind of overlooked, but that was a really surprising game for me because, like I said, usually that format of, you know, being able to go back and like undo anything that you did, it creates all sorts of problems. And I usually don't like those types of stories, but this one was really well done. So I really liked it. Let's go on to Stan here. Stan, what's your 2011 pick?
Oh boy. Okay. So this game I have in 2011 because I played it on the European version, and that is Xenoblade Chronicles, the original, on the Wii. And a lot has been said about this game. It's a lot of people's one of their favorite RPGs, and I'm in that group. It's not just my favorite game of 2011. It's one of my favorite RPGs ever. Like in the top 10 easily, maybe even the top 5.
Totally agree.
It's such a well constructed game. The faults that it has are kind of so minor. Like it's probably too long, right? But that's a flaw that many JRPGs have.
Right.
Right. They're padded out. They go too long. Too many quests or too many optional quests or whatever.
Dungeons can feel a little fluffed out.
Yeah, but overall, I mean, I think it's safe to say that most people are playing the JRPGs for the story, and it has a great story and a totally unique setting, right? It takes place, the world for this game is set on a giant, right? Like a giant who's asleep, essentially. But he's so big, you have like towns and, you know, whole fields and jungles and everything, like all on this giant. That's like, it's such a unique concept, right? And I think it's very rare where you have a game with very interesting ideas and concepts, and also like totally nails the experience, the gameplay experience, the execution of said story, you know. And there are, it's a very anime kind of twists and turns in the story, you know, but they're all pulled off very well, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
I agree. I mean, even then, the twists in that game are still very surprising.
Yeah.
Like,
and
I did not think the story would turn the way it did, but it absolutely did.
I think that one of the reasons it was so well done in terms of the story and the presentation, like y'all are talking about, is because the developers, they actually hired people experienced in directing anime episodes. Now that might sound kind of bad to some people, but their job is story pacing and, you know, directing scenes, right? So when you go to look at the story sequences in this game, it doesn't feel like a video game. It feels like an actual television show. I mean, the pacing of it, and just, you know, how well presented it is, and the camera angles, and just how scenes end. Like, it just feels so top notch and special that it's just like, wow, this is like, games like this don't come out often.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, I could go on and on about how great it is. I guess
Yeah.
so. We'll cut it there, and just, I really love the game. It's my favorite game of any of the ones that I'm about to mention on this list. So
very cool. One other thing, and then I'm the same way. Like, me and Eric talked about this game for 2 hours during our review. But the game, even like its flaws, there's like, I feel like there's little caveats. Like, yeah, this is a flaw, but it's still really well done. And what I mean by that, I'll give you an example, is we said the dungeons are really fluffed out. There's a lot of dungeons. It feels really padded out. That's true. There's a ton of dungeons, and they keep going on forever sometimes. But I don't think I ever went through a single dungeon where I felt like I saw duplicate textures. Like, it was like every dungeon was completely made, like somebody, a lot of times what you get is you get like the same like cave, and then you get another cave using the same textures, but it's like on the other side of the continent or something. Like this game has every dungeon that's just totally imaginative, totally unique, something that's straight out of like a fantasy novel. So it just has a touch to it that you don't often find elsewhere. So, anyways, Eric, what did you have for your 2011?
I'm gonna say Stan has great taste, man. What can I say about?
We're on the same page so far.
God, man. Yep, same page so far. Xenoblade Chronicles.
I feel
this. Me and Had already gave an extensive review in another video, and you can check that out. So I won't divulge too much. Just in short, though, this was my favorite JRPG during the Wii 360 PS3 era. There was a lot of RPGs that came out around this time, and this one, some random game on the Wii, came out, and to me, just dominated all of them. And I mean, I can't wait till the remake comes out. I want to experience it again. I think it would be my 4th playthrough. I got the European version. I got the North American version. I have it on the Wii U, and I have it on the 3DS.
Yeah.
I like this game a little bit.
Yeah.
But I'll just keep it short from there. Another thing, just to mention real quick, is the music is absolutely fantastic. It's got a lot of epic tracks. I love the boss themes, especially in this game.
Yeah.
And or especially the famous Guar Plains. When you first go out there for the first time, like you want to stay there just because of the music.
Yeah, it's amazing.
But that is my 2011.
If you are going to play the game, you could either play with those whack new graphics, which might actually be really good. We'll have to give it a chance in the remake. Or you can emulate it on your PC like me and play it in 1080p. Phenomenal. So anyways, just wanted to throw that out there as a suggestion. For me, for 2011, I actually played Xenoblade Chronicles in 2012. So for me, 2011, this is going to be a controversial pick, I think, given some of our comments on this game in the past. But I was looking at the lineup of games this year for 2011, and I just had a hard time not picking Skyrim because to me, that game just had an impact on me because prior to that game coming out, like, yeah, RPGs, especially Western RPGs, were gaining popularity. There was definitely some popular ones, and I strongly prefer Morrowind's gameplay style to Skyrim. But once Skyrim came out, like, it was ridiculous. Like, I had my aunt texting me about Skyrim if I had ever played it. I knew people that only played FIFA games, right? That's all they would ever play, or like they would only play football games or whatever, sports game they're into. And, all of a sudden they're talking about Skyrim. Like before this, like fantasy open world games like this, it was kind of nerdy. All of a sudden, like Skyrim came out and it made it cool. It was like very approachable to like regular people. Yeah, they dumbed down the combat a little bit, but like it was still a very fun and fun game to play. Clearly not as in depth as some of the prior entries, but I mean this game really changed the landscape of RPGs. And like we saw so many RPGs after this game come out and try to copy the formula, and like I don't know, like there's something about Skyrim that's still kind of fun. I like playing it still. It's not the best one in the series, but I do think it is a very important game for sure.
Yeah. I mean, and this came out before Bethesda's reputation got tarnished,
right?
And everything.
Right.
It's fun to hate on Bethesda and everything they do nowadays, but when this game came out, everybody fell in love with it. It's not my cup of tea. It's just I found the setting to be too boring for my taste. The world not interesting enough, but man, I am certainly the minority on that. Everyone and their mother wanted to play Skyrim. I mean, it was all over the place. The sales were great. The reviews were high, despite it being a very buggy game and the PS3 being near unplayable.
Yeah,
when it first came out. But I mean, there is no denying that it has made an impact in gaming as we know it. And a lot of companies, like you said, took influence off of it afterwards. So even if it's something I don't care for, I certainly acknowledge the importance of that game.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's crazy. My nephew, my youngest nephew, he's 8 years old, and I was saying on a prior podcast for Thanksgiving, he was kind of bored at my my grandfather's house, and so I pulled out my Switch because I had a copy of Skyrim on there, and I busted out and gave it to him, and man, he was like, "Oh, Skyrim!" And like he was playing the crap out of it, and he was asking me like all about all these different bosses and stuff that he had played, and I was thinking about it, like, dude, when you were born, basically, this game came out. And like it's still going around today. Like people still find enjoyment out of it. So there's something definitely there for that. I'll go ahead and say for 2012 that I picked Xenoblade Chronicles because I did not play the European version. So I'm not going to rehash some of my thoughts earlier about the game. It's a fantastic game. But Eric, what did you have for your 2012 game?
Well, this is another one in the lineup from the Operation Rainfall. My 2012 pick is the lighting, The Last Story for the Wii. Another great RPG that was at the very end of the Wii's lifespan. This was a Mistwalker game made by Hironobu Sakaguchi, the creator of Final Fantasy. And this is definitely, I would say, the best RPG that his team has made, and it's a pretty fantastic game. It's the best way to put it. It's about a group of mercenaries that take on the task for the royalty of that kingdom, and your character has like dreams to become a knight within this kingdom, and the story kind of follows through um, on these elements. And the gameplay wise, it's fantastic. It's kind of what I wish uh, in a way that FF15 would be, or I thought FF15 would be, like a more dynamic version of that. But it's essentially it is an action RPG in a sense that like you do go up and you swipe enemies when you go to them, but you use certain mechanics like you got to take cover when enemies like use like a bow against you or magic or an AoE attack and stuff like that. So you have to use your terrain as a means to strategize. So there's a lot of cool strategic elements in there. And as you saw like right here, the artwork is just absolutely gorgeous. The characters are beautifully designed. And the game actually still looks really good today, which is why I've really wanted Sakaguchi and his team to get back with Nintendo and say, let's make an HD remaster of this for the Switch, or or go to any company and be like, let's release this for the PS4, PC, Switch. Let's see if people can get interest back in it and make a Last Story too, because this is a game that definitely deserves to have a sequel. Yeah, Hironobu Sakaguchi needs a Final Fantasy like series again to work on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't played the game extensively. I played the first couple of hours, and I want to go back and keep playing. I really liked what I played, but I totally agree, man. I want Sakaguchi back in the chair making these types of games again. I mean, that's where he excels. So definitely need to check it out some more. Stan, what do you got for 2012?
So for 2012, I have a game called Persona 4 Golden for the Vita. It's actually the only Persona game that I've played, but I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I heard that was a good one.
Yeah.
It is.
People really like 3 and now 5 as well. I think that's kind of the best one. So from what I hear, number 4 is the only one I've played, and it's an interesting game.
I would put 4 above 3.
Okay. Yeah, I liked it a lot. It's got kind of a it kind of feels like a Scooby-Doo premise, right?
Yeah.
Where you have like a group of high school students, and there's like a mystery going on in what's called the Midnight Channel, and they find out that they can go into they can actually pass through a TV and go into like another dimension almost. It's kind of bizarre. It's out there, but the characters in the game are really good, really well done, and it has a lot of dialogue and it's very slow paced. But it's like once you're invested, right, in the characters and the story and where it's going, it's got kind of a mystery theme going on to it right there. I say Scooby Doo because they're kind of trying to find out who the murderer is for their small town. There's like murders going on, and so it's kind of like a whodunit kind of story to it. And
without the mystery machine.
Right,
Just to add
right.
on
Yeah.
to your Scooby Doo, they literally got a teddy bear as
Yes.
a companion.
They have a mascot as well. Yeah. And the combat system in it is kind of similar to Final Fantasy X, where you have enemies with different weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's usually an element, whereas in Final Fantasy X, it's typically a different, like physical attack or a party member that can deal weakness damage to the enemy. But in Persona 4, it's very similar. The enemies have different elements that they're weak to, and your party members have different elements.
Yeah.
And so if you can hit all of them down at the same time, you hit them with their weakness, they go down, then you can do an all-out attack where all the characters just go in and beat them up, and it makes the battles very fast and engaging, like snappy, like I'm going to hit this enemy with this. Okay, now cool, it's my turn again. Now I'm going to hit this one with their weakness. And then before you know it, you all out attack and the battle is over, which is very good because the dungeons are quite long in this game from what I remember. So, but at least it's kind of fast paced.
I haven't played Persona 4 Golden, which I know is the version that you're talking about here. I played the original on the PS2. So, and I think the difference between those is they added some more gameplay, right? You can stay in school longer and there's a new voice actor. What was the difference between that and the PS2? Do you know?
You can traverse nighttime instead of going right back home.
And there was also a kind of a minor character added to the game, she appears in the what is it called? The place between worlds where you are customizing your personas.
Oh, the Velvet Room?
The Velvet Room, yeah. She's like in the Velvet Room, and a lot of people don't really like that character that they added, but it is one of the differences.
Yeah.
I think they added a special in-game dungeon after you beat the game also.
Yeah.
That's another thing they added in the Golden version.
I was really impressed with what I played, especially, this is going to sound weird, but like the voice acting, like the audio is so warm. I'm just like, wow, this is like really well recorded. I just want to know what microphone they use because it just sounded so good. And the little social links and like the gameplay, like you described with the battle system, was a lot of fun. I just didn't get used into the loop. That was one of those games where there were so many choices, it kind of fatigued me. But I think that one of these days I'm going to have to go back through and really pound through it because I know that's such a iconic game, especially Golden. Everyone tells me that that's the best version of the game to play. So
yeah, it is. It definitely has, because of the social link system, if you want to 100% everything, you need a guide. Like you need to hit up GameFAQs and do all the right choices on all the right days with a little bit of wiggle room. But if you're just playing the game blind and you're just kind of picking choices that seem good to you at the time, then I believe you can do New Game Plus and carry over your progress into the next playthrough. But you're going to need to play it more than once if you didn't use a guide on the first run. So I guess you could say that's kind of a little bit of a negative for some people. Maybe some people love to play through it with a guide, and get the best ending, but
you'll get you'll get everything out of the main story itself as long as you're generally making right choices.
Yeah,
I know 3/4 into the game that a certain decision you make, if you do not make the correct one, you get a bad ending.
Yeah.
And then there's 2 bad endings you can get, and there's one good ending you can get based on the choice you make there. And that opens up the last 1/4 of the game, pretty much.
Sure. Well, very interesting.
I will say this is the only Persona I've really gotten attached to. I tried to play 5. I'm going to give it a chance again one day, but I felt like Persona 5 took too long to get to a point where it starts to get interesting, whereas Persona 4, it almost immediately
Yeah, within the first
makes
few hours.
starts the game off very interesting. You already want to know who the murderer is pushing these people into the demonic TV world.
Right.
Yeah.
So I look at Persona 4 highly against the others, but I'm not a big Persona person in general. I like the main Shin Megami Tensei series. So
Sure.
mhm.
Well, very very cool. I saw what Stan did there. He snuck in the Persona 4 Golden to get the 2012 there. Very
Well,
sneaky, Stan.
In my
Yeah.
defense, if I didn't pick this game, it would have had to be Final Fantasy 13 too, and nobody wants that, right?
That glorious work of fiction. Yes. Lots of
So
great
we'll go with Persona 4 Golden.
great time travel in that game.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it.
Anybody want to ride that chocobo? Nobody wanted to ride that chocobo.
Well, speaking of chocobos, I already know what Eric's going to pick for 2013. Eric, what do you got for 2013? What was your
2013? I didn't feel like pulling the collector's edition thing off my thing, so
oh,
of course everyone knows Final Fantasy 14: A Realm Reborn. This is my Xenos Galvis
Very
statue
nice.
from the Stormblood one. Of course, the original FF14 came out in 2010. It was a failure of a product. They got a new team in. Naoki Yoshida came in, completely tore the old game down and blew it up with a meteor, pretty much in game, and it jumped to a whole new game, A Realm Reborn. This is not only just a new version of a game that previously failed. Like, this is going to go down in the history books of video games. No one has ever brought a game back from the dead like this, and the MMO on top of that are stupidly expensive to make.
yeah.
Like, this is one of the riskiest things a game company could do. Like, if they failed a second time, Square Enix would have been in a really bad place. They were already in the red with original 14's failure. Like, we may not have what we have today if they failed a second time. It would have just been shut down. But no, it's highly successful. Shadowbringers came out this year, and it's one of the best Final Fantasy stories I've ever taken in ever. And I've gotten to the point that it's actually FF14 story has gone second place for me, just under Final Fantasy 9. Like, it's gone so far and beyond in its storytelling, and like, people need to look past the fact that it's an MMO also, because it is mostly a single player game until you have to do dungeons or a trial fight. And I mean, I've said this over and over again, but yeah, Final Fantasy 14 is like the best Final Fantasy in a long time, and everyone should definitely
Give it a shot. Yeah,
that's my 2013.
It's so crazy though that you were talking about that they went back and remade this game. I mean, that was just such a weird time in the Final Fantasy franchise. I chose Final Fantasy 14 as well, by the way. But that was such a weird time in the franchise when it just seemed like Square couldn't do anything right. We're kind of still in that point now, but occasionally they do things right. But back then, Final Fantasy 12 was a little bit of a disappointment, but people still generally liked it. 13 was good, etc. And then once 14 came out, and it was like getting like 6s out of 10s and 5s out of 10s and things like that, it was just like, Jesus, is this the end? And I mean, they rebuilt it and did what they needed to do. Go ahead, Stan. What were you gonna say?
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, like kind of from 2010 to 2012, before a Realm Reborn came out, that was probably like the lowest period Square had been in, at least in kind of the fans' eyes, I think.
Yeah, they were not in a good spot at all.
Yeah.
So once a Realm Reborn came out, like, that just blew my mind that they just were like, no, we're going to eat all that money and we're going to try to fix this because the brand is important to us. And eventually I picked up the game on the PlayStation 3. And, I didn't have a lot of time then. I was in the military. I had roommates that, like, we were living in the same room, right? So it was kind of difficult to spend hours and hours on an MMO RPG. But when I did play it, it changed the concept of what an online RPG could be, because prior to that, most of my experience with online RPGs were back when I was like a teenager, and it was primarily like watered down gameplay, and like what they were promising was the ability to interact with friends and make new friends. And it never felt like the gameplay and the experience was, like a AAA experience. It always felt more on, emphasis was placed on the social aspect. And once I played this game, I was like, wow, this is like a top tier RPG, but it just happens to be online. And it really made me realize that, like, you could play a single player experience online, interact with that stuff if you want to, but the gameplay also, and just like the presentation in terms of the story, it can be good as well. So that really kind of changed my opinion on what online RPGs could be. So definitely a good game for 2013. But Stan, what did you have for 2013?
So I also played Final Fantasy XIV: A Realm Reborn when it launched. I would have picked it if it was not for one other game that came out in 2013. I was actually just looking at my list of games that came out in 2013, and I was surprised how stacked it was.
Are you talking about Lightning Returns?
No.
Oh.
Did that one come
out?
There
are a lot of games that came out in 2013.
Stan, I like giving you a hard time.
Right?
Yeah. So no, that didn't come out.
So we have we had Ni no Kuni: Wrath of the White Witch, Tales of Xillia, Ys Memories of Celceta, which came out on the PSP, and Final Fantasy XIV, all in 2013. So
and Bravely Default.
And Bravely Default too, yeah. So I was kind of surprised by that.
From what I saw, Bravely Default came out February 2014.
Oh, did it?
For America?
Yes.
Okay.
North America. Sorry, didn't mean to.
Just missed it, yeah.
Like that, but Bravely Default may appear in this conversation later, so.
Okay.
Keep going.
But I've said in the past, I'm not really a big MMO person. And so while Final Fantasy XIV is an excellent game, since this is my personal list, right. I went instead with Valkyria Chronicles 3 for PSP. Now, this game was only ever released in Japan in 2013. It has never been translated into English, but I played a fan translation patch of the game, essentially. So I would have bought it if it came out here, but it never did. So I played the patch version. It, in my opinion, has the best story of any of the Valkyria Chronicles games, and that's mostly because of the villains. And so it takes place during the first war as the first game. If you're familiar with the first Valkyria Chronicles game, it's kind of a World War II type of setting, and has so you've got like tanks and the soldiers on the battlefield use like rifles and kind of rocket launchers, like low tech kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so in this game, your troops that you're playing as are kind of like the outcasts of society. So what that means is like criminals or people who have been caught doing wrong or are accused of various different things by the government, right? Those people still have to go out and fight for the nation during the war, right? Because the country has like a mandatory service type of system, male or female, right? You get civilians get drafted into the military because it's a small country. The best part about the story, in my opinion, was the main villain is a Darkson, which is kind of like a a race of people with dark hair, right? It's anime, right? So everything, but that's their thing. Is anybody with dark hair is a dark sin, and they're blamed for all kinds of things that they're not responsible for, essentially. And there's a lot of racism towards these people, right? So the main villain is actually a dark sin fighting on the Empire side, the enemies, right? And his motivation is like, I'm gonna fight for the Empire and become a well-known like war hero, essentially, right? And then when the war is over, I will be famous and go off and set aside my own country and allow all the Darkson people to come to a place where they will no longer be discriminated against, to set up their own society. And so you're playing the game and you're confronting this guy, and it's like, well, he has noble goals, right? He's not kind of a twirly mustache type of villain, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And slight spoiler, some of your own people, like your own Darksons in your troop, since your troop is like the kind of the outcasts of society, right? Darkson people have just been thrown in there for not really doing anything wrong. You know, they're just discriminated against, so they end up in this troop for like the misfits, right? Some of them leave and join the villain, and I have to caveat that I've you know, this was through a fan translation, right? So I don't know how it actually reads in the Japanese. It's somebody else's interpretation of the story, obviously.
Sure.
But I found that really interesting. Like, your characters leave, right? Your Darkson characters in your troop leave and follow the villain, and you can't really say that they're wrong for
Right.
betraying you for doing that, because your own country that you're fighting for discriminates against these people, and they choose the vision of the villain, essentially. So it was like very gray, I guess the story is. Like, it was very nuanced, and that made me think, you know, that was not something that you really see a lot in a JRPG.
Right. It wasn't your standard flair. There was a lot of things that would make you think that, okay, what would I do if I was in this position? Can you blame them? I like that.
Yeah, so I thought that was really interesting. And by far the most, like, a Valkyria Chronicles game has made me really ponder, like, the story or, like, the nature of war and how that, you know, played into everything. So.
Gotcha. Very cool. Very cool. Awesome pick. I have to make one minor correction before we continue. I looked it up some more. I did some more research real quick, and I saw that Bravely Default initially came out in North America in 2012. Then they did a re-release that came out in 2013 in Japan, and then this re-release came out in North America in 2014. We've already started the podcast.
Too late now, yeah.
Too late now. I'm sticking with it once we get to it. But Stan, what do you have for your 2014 game?
So 2014 was kind of a rough year for me. I didn't play that very many good JRPGs, I guess you would say. We've got Lightning Returns and Tales of Xillia 2 in there.
Classics.
And I really didn't want to pick those.
Oh, Tales of Xillia 2.
Yeah, so
it's twice as good as Tales of Xillia 1, right?
Yeah. No,
it's
but
the second one. It's twice.
Don't play the game. Too bad. Pay off the debt.
In 2014, kind of an indie RPG from Ubisoft, Child of Light, first came out. Now, I didn't play that until earlier this year, actually.
I've heard a lot about that game.
Yeah, so 2014 is actually back when it came out, I believe, still in the 360. Oh wait, no, that would have been PS4 for sure.
Well,
I don't remember what platform it first released on. I've played it only on Switch, the Switch version this year.
Okay.
And it's just a very chill game, like great aesthetic to it, kind of like a almost like a moving storyboard kind of feel to it. Turn-based combat, very pretty standard. Like, it's a nice game to come home after work and play, you know, an hour or two, and just It's not really very intense or anything, but it's I don't know, just a good package overall.
I really
That's what I can
like
say about it.
the. I've never played it, but I really like the art aesthetic of it. That's been the one thing that's kind of drawn me towards it to want to give it a shot. I'm gonna get some of it on the screen here, but it seems like a really
Hmm.
unique presentation, especially for 2014. You know, we started this started to be a little bit more of a trendy style, or a year or two ago. So this seems like this was one of the games that kind of said, "Hey, you know what? We don't need this like ultra realistic uh, graphics. We're just going to be more stylistic," and it seems really really cool. I really like it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty much the start for that type of thing. Like a lot of other games took influence from it. I played it and I really enjoyed it at the time. I completely forgot about it till now. And you can actually play it on the Switch. They did
Hmm.
re-release it on that. It's a short game for sure, but for what they give you through it, it's very satisfying.
Hmm.
Like it's just going through like the beautiful areas are just worth it in itself. Um it's a very simple story too, but like it's so aesthetically pleasing and the
Hmm.
music is very pleasing also. It's just like such a nice, comfortable little experience to
Yeah, it's
have.
It
very
seems
calming game.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
say it seems like they really put a lot of effort in focusing on what are you feeling or what is the mood, right?
Hmm.
And
For
I
sure.
I like that because the mood's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be relaxing. It's supposed to be enjoyable. I don't care how many strands of hair I can see. you know, so very cool. Let's see here. So I'll go ahead and jump in there because I've already kind of said what I was going to pick here. We have Bravely Default. This version, whatever I didn't play this game when it came out. I played it later, but I was really impressed with this game. I mean, a lot of times around this area, this time frame and before, you would kind of get these retro styled RPGs that would come out, and like usually they would be re-releases of older games, and they would have like super generic looking pixel art, and just like it wouldn't be, it would be a shadow of the past, right? And like Bravely Default seems to be like one of those games that came along and it said like, you know what? No, like not only are we going to do those retro styled RPGs, but we're actually going to put effort into it, and we're going to show that there's still an interest in these styles of games. And I mean, it's just really well done. I don't, I'm not particularly fascinated with the story as much as I'd like to be, but I mean, you have the art style. It's this like hand painted like background that it just gives it this like, just I don't know, it just makes me feel like I'm playing something like Final Fantasy 9 where like it just feels very personal touch like to every area. And then also it took, the combat, turn-based combat, and it made it even more intricate and strategic, but it didn't feel daunting. It was like presented in a way that felt um very easy to understand. It didn't sit there, like a Pokemon game and be like, okay, Will, hit the attack button to attack, right? It took some basics there that like it felt like you already knew how to play turn-based
Hmm.
combat, and it explained what it needed to explain. And I thought that sometimes it could be a little excessive, but I just felt like this was a really good highlight for what we see today, where we have a lot more of these retro styled RPGs being made, even from the same team. We obviously have had a sequel and then another one that was just announced, but they also made the Octopath games, and then we've also seen this complete rise in these like indie level retro styled RPGs that are actually trying to capture the heart of what made those games good. And I definitely feel like this was a standout in that development. Definitely a good game. So
I'll share the hate with you, Hat. I'll pick Bravely Default also. um God damn, I love this game. It is the gameplay is fantastic. The Bravely and Default systems are a very well thought out type of system. The music in the game is absolutely awesome. I have like the soundtrack on my uh phone. I love it so much. Um like I don't know who plays the violin on that soundtrack, but it is damn fantastic. Like you said, the story is pretty all right. It's very serviceable. It's a very Final Fantasy esque like one, and typical Empire stuff. Um, Now, this game definitely has a crazy twist ending that like it's like completely left field. You don't expect to happen. And I found that so absolutely fascinating and very interesting. The one downside to that is um chapters like 5 to 8 in the game are one of the most stress inducing tedious things I've ever done in a video game. The payoff was all worth it in the end if you're someone who decided to do all the content in those chapters.
Right.
But I did because this is a game I wanted 100%, and I did. And it was worth it because the final dungeon, the actual final dungeon and final boss of this game, was so epic. It was so awesome. And it did this really awesome social link system. If you had friends on your 3DS who are also playing the game, it created this nice little bonus effect to the narrative of that final battle, and it was so awesome. And I'm trying to not spoil it the best I can.
Yeah, it's
But
hard.
this
It's
is a
hard.
game I highly recommend. If you have a 3DS, you haven't played it yet, like go out and get this game. It is 100% worth your time.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like it was an RPG that could have been a console RPG because back then there was this idea that, I mean, even then at that point, at least for me, was that, you know, games that came out on mobile, like they weren't necessarily as good as console games. But that game, I was just like, man, this is a great game. this is this is this is something special. So, cool. So Stan, and then you just went with Bravely Default. So I think it's 2015 time. So I'll go ahead and start us off here. I picked Witcher 3. Again, I didn't play Witcher 3 in 2015. I played it a little bit later.
Wait, let me ask first. Who here did not pick Witcher 3?
Me, because I haven't played it. That's the only
man.
reason.
Come on, man.
I haven't played it, so I can't pick it for my list.
Yeah,
But
well,
go ahead.
anyways.
Sorry, Hank, go ahead.
Yeah, well, we're just gonna remove Stan off this call. No, I'm just kidding. So Witcher 3, you know, I got a little fatigued for a while with open world designed games. They started to feel a little boring. They just felt like they were endless valleys with nothing really to explore. And I think that what really impressed me about Witcher 3 was there was actually a reason to explore because these side quests were like more than just side quests. They were actually like engrossing stories that were actually very interesting, very touching at times, and just very enjoyable to be a part of. And before that, a lot of times side quests would mostly be just a game loop, a reason for you to get more money or an item. They might have some like generic story like my mom won't let me date the person I want to date until I bring home 10 apples. Like, or something, right? And you're like, well, that makes no sense, but okay, let me go get 10 apples. So you'll pay me 500 gold. Like, usually, like a lot of times, that's what a lot of open world games would do, that type of generic side quest with an occasional story. And this game was just like totally engrossing. Like, I would just get wrapped up in just like somebody I talked to in a village and like what they wanted me to do. And I would follow the whole story and just, you know, like, it was just very, very engrossing. Not to mention, it just had a great story to it that really led me to want to read the books once I found out they were based on books and it wasn't the other way around, that the books were based on the games were based on the books. So it made me want to go and check those out as well. And it really kind of gave me faith, I think, in the open world design. So, Eric, what did you think about The Witcher 3?
It is the best Western RPG ever made, easily. And I'll die on that hill saying that. I know what's come before it, and I still mean it. Like, this is like I never got so engrossed in the Western RPG like this game. Like you said, all the side quests were engaging. There were stories to them. They used gameplay in a lot of aspects to tell the narrative and the story also, which was absolutely amazing. Not to mention their DLC expansions were awesome. Like they weren't just like you pay $20 for the DLC and you get like an hour or two extra of gameplay. Like these
Or
were like
some costume
expansions.
changes or something. Yeah.
Like Hearts of Stone was like a cool major side quest story in itself, but then you got like Blood and Wine, which was a whole new region, a whole new story,
It's crazy.
and like and it was beautiful. And the campaign was like not as long as the main story, but it was like 3/4 the length of the main story.
Yeah, I think what really stuck with me was that this game, while being an open world game, was still telling a story, and the story fit the open world, right? Whereas
Yes.
a lot of times, especially with like the Elder Scrolls, for example, not trying to hate on them, but it would be like okay, go ahead, design your own character. What race are you? And then you were just, you know, Dragonborn, and like you would make your own story, right? There would be a generic story that as interesting as you want it to be, but in general, it was just make your own adventure. This was like what I liked in JRPGs, meaning a very structured story with a very well developed, but it just worked with the open world design.
It did, specifically because the narrative was created, or like the narrative works with the open world so well. And what I mean by that is like, so the main story is Geralt's looking for Ciri, and basically he's going through well, he's also a witcher, and what witchers do is they hunt monsters for coin, essentially. So while Geralt is out searching for Ciri, he's doing witcher work at the same time.
Yeah.
So it makes complete sense to have an open world like that.
Yeah.
So the open world works as a narrative strength to this game, and it just feels natural. Like I'm not like unlike some other games that attempted to do open world with a linear story.
Yeah.
I won't say a name because we might talk about it down the line here. But but yes, Witcher just pretty much hits everything right. Geralt himself is one of the most fascinating characters I've seen. I've never seen someone who's just so gruff and dry be so interesting at the same time.
Right.
Like I'm so fascinated how they nailed a character like this.
Yeah, I mean, they just worked on making an interesting character, but a very interesting world. And then, when they made DLC content, it was additional content. It wasn't like removed content. It wasn't, anything else. It was actual content that you wanted to buy. So I would put this game as one of those other games that I think in the last decade really kind of changed the landscape of RPGs in general, because we had Skyrim at the beginning of the decade that really got people on this open world route, and then Witcher 3 came along and just was like, it felt like years ahead of everything else. So definitely a fantastic game. Apparently they're going to make a Witcher 4 at some point in the future. They've been talking about it. So after Cyberpunk, they're going to make a Witcher 4. So I'm gonna look forward to that
in 2030.
Yeah, maybe after they're done with this Netflix series.
The Witcher's gotten too big now that they can't just simply ignore it at this point.
No, it'd be too hard. Stan, what lower class game did you pick?
Oh yeah, so now I get the fun task of picking a game that's not Witcher 3, huh?
In 2015, yeah. It's impossible.
So yeah, I didn't play it in the year that it came out in 2015, but I did play it later, and that is Trails of Cold Steel on PS3.
You picked a Falcom game.
I did, yep. This game I had a lot of fun with. It's a very long game. If I had to compare it to something else, I would actually say it's kind of like a Persona game in terms of structure, right? You have a lot of story content, right? And then a dungeon, right? And then the dungeon's over, and then you have a lot of story content again before the next dungeon. And it also has kind of like a school setting, this first game in the Cold Steel arc. And there is kind of like a social link thing even, it's not exactly the same, but it's similar enough to be like, oh, you've played Persona, right? Well, you know what this is then.
Right.
You know, really good music. Really enjoyed the music, especially on the field maps, kind of traveling, and interesting characters. Some of them are a little cliche, but still like a very distinct personalities, I guess you could say, in your class, that your party members essentially.
Mm.
And there is an overarching plot going on, but it's kind of pushed into the background a lot because the kids, the characters, they're not really in the loop, right? They kind of have a general idea of what's going on, and it's like a very political plot going on in the background.
Right.
But it's interesting dynamic, they're just trying to they're at school, military school no less, just trying to work on their studies, and their grades and stuff. But you've got kind of like a civil war situation brewing in the background. So, they're all aware of that, but also like trying to go about their day-to-day lives.
How similar in tone is that game to the other games, the ones that came before it that I'm struggling here?
Trails in the Sky, right?
Yeah, are they even like similar at all, or is it just a totally different experience?
I'd say they're very similar in the pacing, in that they have a lot of dialogue, right? But Trails in the Sky is much more of a lighthearted kind of brother and sister go on a journey, right?
Okay.
Around the country, and then they encounter, some serious quest lines and situations along the way. But there are parts in that game where it's like, oh, let's stop here and eat a sandwich, and like go on and on, whereas Trails of Cold Steel is more, I guess the story is more direct. Like each event happening kind of is building on each other, versus like kind of Trails in the Sky feels more disconnected. Like you go to a town, right? You resolve some issues there, and then the next town feels kind of disconnected. I guess like it feels like a collection of short stories, whereas this one is more of like building on what just happened in the previous chapter, I guess.
Okay.
And yeah, I don't know what else I can say about it. The combat system is very interesting. It's similar to Trails in the Sky. It's turn-based combat, where you have on the left side of the screen, you can see the turn order, right? So it's like pure turn-based, not ATB. And you can see like your characters are going to get 2 actions, and then the monsters are going to go, right? They like monster A, B, C gets to go.
Right.
And then it'll be your character again. And then when you're selecting your actions, you can see how that will affect the turn order, just like Final Fantasy X. So that's fun to play with. And then to add on top of that, there are certain bonuses that are added on certain turns. So it's like, say on this turn, your magic spell will come out right away and cost you no MP, right? But you can see like, oh, that'll be on the monster's turn. That's not good. So you can kind of manipulate your actions, or maybe try and delay that monster, so that instead that slot will fall into one of your characters instead, so that your character will get that turn and get to use the spell at no MP cost.
I get you.
So you're kind of trying to manipulate that, and also the game rewards you for certain things in combat. Like if you take no damage whatsoever, you get bonus experience. If you kill multiple enemies at the same time with one ability, you get bonus experience. And win with each character only taking 1 turn, you get bonus experience. So that's kind of fun, keeps the battle system interesting.
Very cool. Yeah, me and Eric have kind of been allergic to those games. I know that that particular series, or the Falcom games in general, and I know that some of our listeners have been wanting us to play them some more. The little bit that I've stuck my toe into, I've enjoyed, for the world building and just the attention to detail with the story. But it's, again, I'm going to have to find some time here one of these days and go through it. Maybe we can have a discussion on the podcast at some point about one of the games. I want to get into it. So
it's a big investment. That's the thing. Yeah, it's easily 80+ hour game. Like the same length as like a Persona game or Xenoblade Chronicles that we already talked about. It's very long. So, and a lot of that is because they have tons of world building and dialogue between all the gameplay sections.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's stop talking about Falcom games. I saw Heon showing up in the chat.
Uh-oh.
No, I'm just kidding. No.
Just kidding.
Yeah, I'm just kidding, Heon. So I just want to give a shout out to Will. He said, long time watcher, first time I've caught you guys live because I stayed away from work sick. He said, keep up the good work. Greetings from Taiwan. So I'm glad you were able to make it, and hope you feel better. Hopefully you didn't stay home from sick on our account, but very cool. Glad to have you here. Let's see here. So we just went through that. And Eric, what did you have for your 2016 game?
2016 was a really weak year for RPGs for me. I kind of looked through the list and I'm like, there's nothing really here that really impacted me. There were some games that were okay, but I think this one is kind of like a meet in the middle type of deal because it does have role playing elements. But I really enjoyed Hyper Light Drifter for 2016. This is a very interesting game. It's a Zelda like adventure type game where you're going to different places on the map to unlock these things, and it has a really fascinating story. There isn't any dialogue in it, but it's like everything is done through like expressions and stuff like that. And there is a underlining tone or like message to it about like fighting like depression or like illness and stuff like that. And I think that's a really it's a really deep game, and it's kind of really hard to describe, but on those basic levels, that is what it is, and it's one I really highly recommend anyone plays. It has a very interesting vision done with it, and of course, on top of that, the aesthetics are really awesome.
Yeah,
So,
it's. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Keep going.
go ahead. That's mostly all I gotta say about it.
Yeah, it's really just aesthetically pleasing to look at, and just an enjoyable experience all around. And like these are the type of indie games where like I'm just like really interested in checking it out, or checking out other games like it. It's kind of made me search other games out that had a similar style. That's one of the reasons why I bought Children of Morta and why I was so excited for it, because it kind of took that similar art aesthetic and kind of approached it from that perspective. One thing that I want to point out here is I see Dante bringing up a good point that he feels like, Eric, you forgot a game that came out this year that you neglected to bring up. He pointed out that Final Fantasy 15, you're always raving about that game. He's kind of surprised that you didn't bring up 15 as your favorite game.
Oh no, I'm very
aware.
I know exactly what I said at the start of this. Don't worry, Dante. I know what I said.
Yeah, he's totally. That was very intentional. Not to mention that. Very cool. So for me, I had Tales of Berseria. Again, 2016 was kind of an off year for me as well. There was a lot of games that came out the year, but not all of them were as impressive to me. However, Tales of Berseria, I had primarily stayed away from the Tales games just because every time I seen any kind of footage or coverage of them, they always looked like a very generic RPG that was like a 7 out of 10 every single time, low budget, and it seemed like they just pumped them out nonstop, and you were getting like the same game every time. Since then, I've wised up, and where that journey has started for me was with Tales of Berseria. I saw reviews for it saying it was a really good game, that it had a really good story, especially, and so I gave it a chance. And while I hated the gameplay, the story itself, I got really immersed in, and I was like, man, this is like really top-notch storytelling. I feel like I want to keep watching this. Like after, like, I feel like I would rather have just watched that story as like an anime on itself and not played the game. So when I kept regurgitating that opinion to other people, a lot of people on this channel as well, they were telling me, hey, go play Vesperia, go play some of the earlier games. And that's kind of led me to play some of those other games as well. And I've learned that this is actually a really good series, minus a few odd balls. And Berseria was the starting place for me, where it kind of got me on that path that, hey, if you like Berseria, you're going to love some of these other games. So that's why I chose that game. So, but Stan, what did you have?
Yeah, so if I had played Hyper Light Drifter or Tales of Berseria, I probably would have chose one of those as well. Like you guys said, 2016 was kind of rough, right? For RPGs, at least the ones I've played. I went with Final Fantasy X HD Remaster. Now I know that game is like
not a last decade.
Almost 20 years old at this point. However, the remaster came out in 2016, and I played the heck out of that game and loved it just as much as I did back then.
Yeah, it's a good remaster.
Yeah. Other than that, I mean, my other choices were Final Fantasy 15, I Am Setsuna, Star Ocean 5, or The Division. Tom Clancy's The Division, which technically qualifies as an RPG, but it's not really, so... Yeah,
if your favorite RPG is a Tom Clancy game, like, you have issues.
We got problems, right? Yeah.
If I can give Final Fantasy 15 any compliment, it is better than Star Ocean 5.
It definitely is, yeah.
Better than that.
Yeah, I mean...
But yeah, I didn't really feel like giving my Game of the Year for 2016 to Final Fantasy 15 because it just has so many issues, right? It does some good things, right? But it also has like many glaring issues. So I went ahead with FF10 HD Remaster.
I love the fact that 2016, like a Final Fantasy game, a first player Final Fantasy game has not come out in like 8 years. Like some people are like, oh, is this game ever going to come out? We've been waiting 10 years for this game. It finally comes out in 2016. This is the Final Fantasy game of the year. Stan picks Final Fantasy X.
I did.
He's like, yep, no, this game's better. And I agree.
Yep.
I agree. Final Fantasy X Remaster would have been the better purchase, I think, for that year if you had never played either one. Well, even if you had played Final Fantasy X before, that would have been the better one for me, anyways. So obviously they went back and kind of roughed out some of the edges that 15 had, and it's definitely a better game. I still want to go back through and play it again completely with all the additional year of patches and everything else. But on that remaster though for 10, the only thing I didn't like was they did something weird to Tidus's face. I don't know what it is, but his like eyeballs like move around in a really weird way, and he has very like wooden facial features now, and I feel like when I go play the PS2 version, his skin looks very soft and his eyes aren't like marbles that are bouncing around. It just doesn't look as good, but everything else looks really good in that remaster. So
well, they figured back then that he didn't look like Meg Ryan enough, so they wanted to fix that.
Like if like Meg Ryan like slammed her head through like a piece of plywood, like it's really like, oh, perfect.
Yeah,
just slam right through the plywood and just be like, ha 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 ha.
It's like drowning himself and yeah. Anyways, but yeah, I mean, I think that's a perfectly reasonable pick. I think the other option, I Am Setsuna was an enjoyable game for me, but yeah, that was a hard year if you had not played. For me, I was able to get through Berseria, but if I had not played that, I don't know what I would have picked. So I understand.
Yeah, that was probably the toughest year to pick a game for me on this list.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a really tough year. Like I was halfway thinking of Berseria also, but I didn't finish the game.
Right.
So I can't I don't know if it would have gotten to a point where I was satisfied with it or not, but
yeah. For sure. Stan, what did you pick for your 2017 game?
I keep picking all the remasters, and I'm gonna have to repeat that again.
Hey man, Stan's a classic guy. I like him.
Although at this time I had not played the original version of this
Okay.
game, PS2, and that is Odin Sphere. I don't know how to pronounce the the subtitle. It's Leaf Thrasir or something. I think that was my best shot. So, yeah, it's a 2D um, action RPG. It has a great art style and really fun gameplay. Um, and I don't know what else to say about it without spoiling too much. Very enjoyable. I haven't finished the game, but it has really fun music, good music, and it's got a Norse mythology setting, right? Odin Sphere, and Leaf Thrasir is like the Norse word for like rebirth,
Mm.
right? And so since this is like a reboot of the original game, that's what the word they used to kind of tie it into the theme. Now, and the game actually has like two modes where it's like you can play the original version, like exactly how it was on the PS2, or you can play like the updated kind of version of the game, the rebirth version. And so I haven't played the old version. I went with the newer
The
version.
the 2017 version.
Yeah, but I thought that was a cool feature. Like, because I know like another game that came out that year was FF12 Zodiac Age, and there was a lot of people who kind of wanted the original license board to play with, right?
Me,
Yeah,
Oh.
but it's not.
This guy.
I would have settled for the PS2 international system.
Yeah, it's not. It's not an option in that game. So, but yeah,
being able
Odin's
to
that's fine.
Yeah, being able to play both the new version and the old version is always good. I totally agree with you though. Like I haven't played this game, but I've always been very attracted to the art style and just the polish, and even seeing like the cover of the game in stores, it always stands out to me. Like I always look at it and and I'm like, oh man, I want to buy this, but every time I'm in the store, I'm there to buy something else. So
Yeah.
I don't want to spend that much money, but I do want to pick it up at some point. So
Yeah, keep your eye out for it for a sale or something because it's a fun game.
yeah, for sure. Eric, what do you got?
For 2017, I love Zelda Breath of the Wild and Horizon for sure.
Mm,
But for me personally, one that and I have to keep telling myself RPG, 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 and those are arguably RPGs are also, but this one I picked was more to the RPG spectrum. So for the sake of this, I picked Near Automata. Uh, just like the first Near game, wow. It's like but like the great thing is not only do you get a crazy good story from this, like I said with the Yoko Taro magic with it, you also actually get really damn good gameplay this time.
yeah.
Platinum went above and beyond in this game. I think this is probably Platinum at their best gameplay wise. There's a lot of elements and customization you can do to kind of make the play style your own, but still very simple at the same time. Um, a lot of people were turned off by the fact that you do need to play the game over again from someone else's perspective, but uh, there's a lot of different that happens in that second story that I think it can justify itself mostly. I understand where some people come from on that tedious matter, but when it gets back up to the third part of the story, it really, really starts kicking up again. Uh, just like the first Near game, the soundtrack is absolutely fantastic. Never has someone singing in gibberish sounded so good.
It
It
does.
was
It does have a really good soundtrack. Yeah.
there's a lot of cool twists and turns to this game, and like a lot of things that will mess with your mind. Also, by the end of it, it does have a good um, uh, Like I'm never good with fancy words. It has a good underlining theme of like existential. I can't even say that.
Existential.
Existentialism. Uh, I'm bad with my words there, but yes, this is a very good game. You don't need to play the first Nier game, but it does. There are things in the lore that you'll appreciate a lot more if you do play the first game. But this game is very good by itself.
Yeah,
I highly recommend it to everyone.
it's a very stylistically attractive game. I mean, it's like you said, the gameplay is good, the music's good, the art aesthetic, and just the constant change of gameplay is good. But yeah, definitely a highlight of that year. I mean, people were just talking about that game nonstop for good reason. So definitely makes sense. For me, I picked Horizon Zero Dawn. I know some people are going to debate with me whether or not this was a full-fledged RPG, but I think it is. So even though the dice roll is kind of hidden behind some of the more action adventure gameplay, I think at its heart it is an RPG. And this game, I mean, dude, I wouldn't say it's as good as, you know, Witcher 3 in terms of its like side quests, but I really felt like gameplay wise, this game really excelled. I mean, every single encounter didn't feel like it was just like a bandit in the woods. It felt like I was like life and death trying to survive because it was just so freaking intense. And like sometimes random encounters that I, you know, would find, you know, on the side of a mountain would end up feeling like it was like a boss battle. And I was just like frantically running for my life because, you know, I was not prepared for this enemy that I encountered. And, you know, like, I don't know how the game would do this, but if I did come out of this battle alive, it would always be like at the last minute, like I'm just like frantically shooting an arrow through the heart of some machine. And like, I have like one hit left in me before I'm dead. And I'm just sitting there like huffing and puffing, like, good God, I can't believe I made it through that. Like, it was just so exciting to play. And the story is very interesting because it kind of like, it's kind of similar to Final Fantasy X, even though it's very different at the same time, in that, you know, they kind of give you a lot of the information up front, but then it just slowly unravels from there, and you kind of fill in the facts as you go. And by the time you get to the end of the game, it's just a very enjoyable sci-fi romp that I just really, really enjoyed. So, I mean, just even like getting down into some of the side quests and some of the you know, character dialogue and character trees, it almost felt like I was like I was watching Westworld at the time that I was playing this game. And like, I was like, dude, this is like Westworld. Like, this game just keeps going on, and I keep getting deeper and deeper into this. And like, I can't believe how in depth this game goes. It was just, man, that was just such a good game. I like, oh my God, like I cannot wait for the sequel to this game. I love this game.
It's absolutely crazy that in 2017 we got 3 incredible games, all that released around the same time.
Yeah.
Automata, Zelda Breath of the Wild, Horizon Zero Dawn. Horizon, man, that's another game I felt like I just had the 100% on top of that also. Like, that was a really well-designed, contained open world, and the story kept getting more and more intriguing as it went through. Unfortunately, I thought it ended a little weak, but at the same time, I was yearning for more. I want to see more of this world. I want to see the stakes become bigger, and I really want to see something like that done in Horizon 2. They got the opening to just create a bigger story. Like, this was a nice contained story uh, for this type of deal, and like I said, if Breath of the Wild and Nier Automata didn't exist, that it would have easily been my favorite game of the year. But it's one of the best PS4 games, easily. Like this and God of War are probably the best ones.
Yeah, like I'm telling you, like some games, like you turn on and you're like, I don't know, like let me play it, and it kind of grows on you. Like this game, from like the moment I hit new game, I was just like struck with, I like this. Like I like this game a lot. Like I could not get enough of it. It was a very good game. But yeah, I could talk about that for a long time. So, Stan, you just gave your 2017, and Eric, you gave yours. So, I'll go ahead and start us off with our 2018 or my 2018 here, and I think that we're going to get some agreement here. But I picked Dragon Quest XI. So, I don't want to give my complete history with the Dragon Quest series, but I will say that I wasn't as familiar with the series. I'd played a few of the games, so I was kind of looking forward to this game just because, you know, this seemed like a modern take on a franchise that, you know, I'd only played like the Super Nintendo versions, right? I hadn't played even the PS2 games, or the PS2 game. So to be able to play this game in a modern context, I was really, really excited. And it's a longer game. It for sure is a longer game, but I was just baffled by it by the time I got to the end of it because, you know, you get end game credits and then you have post game content, right? But in this game, post game content was like 35 hours of like cutscenes and like additional story that I'm like, dude, this is not post game. This is like the third act of the game, right? So
Pretty much. Yeah.
it was, but when I finished the game and I saw the ending cutscene, I just sat there and I was like, that was a good JRPG. That was like, I feel like that was a very classic JRPG. I feel like, you know, they just don't make them like that anymore. Like that was a really good game. I was really happy that I played that game. Even though it took me forever to play it, I was really happy I went through it and I beat it. But yeah, I don't know. What did you guys, well, we had a review episode on it, so I know Eric loves it, but yeah, what'd you guys think? Dragon Quest XI.
Best JRPG in a very long time. It takes the traditional route and modernizes it, and it's a constant reminder to people that this type of game is still very relevant.
Yeah, I'm just responding to Dante. He suggested Mass Effect Andromeda, so just gotta be like, oh yeah, we forgot that one. But anyways,
Maybe later. Say my face is very tired right now.
Yeah, but Stan, did you ever get any further in Dragon Quest? Did you?
You mentioned the third act, the supposed post game content, right? That's where I am right now. The credits rolled, but the game is not over.
Yeah.
Not by a long shot, it turns out.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's where I am in the game currently. I think I'm very, very close to beat it. Like maybe immediately after this podcast is over, go beat it type of, you know.
Well, I remember we were talking about when the game came out for the PS4 that we were gonna, you know, do a full episode review on it. Eric took like some time off work and he was able to get through it in like a week and a half. But I had just started a new job, so I couldn't. And so it was taking me forever to get through the game because I had so many other commitments at that time. And I remember I got to that you know, credit screen and I was like, that was a good game, but I'm glad it's over because that was like 3 months of my life. And like, I felt this like thing over my head. Like I got to finish this game. And, you know, I think it was like a Thanksgiving break and I finished it and I was like, whew, that was a good game. And then I was like, okay, well, let me see what some of this post-game content is. Let me play the first half hour, see what's going on here. And like, right when I played it, I was just like, Jesus Christ. This is actually just, this is required to play. Okay. Like I will try to, you know, give this another week or two. And I'm so glad I did. So anyways, we just went off on a tangent there. That's always good.
It's all good. You guys both.
Dragon Quest is a beautiful series. You can't help it.
Yeah. Stan, what did you have for 2018?
So I don't have Dragon Quest, and that's only because I haven't played the version that came out in 2018. Even though that's when the game actually came out.
Okay.
For 2018, and this is maybe a little bit of a stretch to call it an RPG, but it is classified as an action RPG, and that would be Monster Hunter World, which is really the only Monster Hunter game that I've gotten into, and it's really well done. like a really there's a lot of content you get in this game, and a lot of it is built around playing online with other people, but it's not a an MMO experience. It's somewhere between like just like a full action game and then like an MMO, I guess you could
It's a
say.
lobby like experience.
Yeah, yeah. And I really enjoyed it, just jumping on with my friends and playing and hunting the different monsters and using different weapons and the different tactics you can do to try and go after different monsters. It is like a grind game, right? Like a loot drop type of game. You're do the same monster many times in order to try and get that one drop you need to make the next level gear so that you can then go fight more monsters. It like it puts you into that gameplay loop.
Right.
It's an incredible game. I would have picked that if Dragon Quest 11 didn't come out
Yeah.
this year. Like, this is the first time they've actually like made a bona fide like sequel to Monster Hunter, because every game they've come out with has essentially been the same game. They've come out with like new monsters and like
Mhm.
type of mechanics and stuff like that to enrich the gameplay experience, but like they've been using the same engine every
Yeah.
single game and like same graphics engine and stuff too. And like this is like the first time they actually like went to the next step, and that next step was incredible.
Yeah.
Like they did like they did they made it so very open to newcomers, and
Mhm.
they made that nice gap between the newcomers and veteran players, because there are some hard monsters to beat in this game. And I mean like really hard. You have to be really damn good at this game, above having good gear to beat these monsters. And like it's a game for everyone now instead of just being like a niche product.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I feel like it's the breakout game of this franchise in terms it's sold like millions and millions of copies. I don't even know how many, but it's been like super successful for them. And like yeah, I'm one of the people who was kind of like maybe dabbled in a Monster Hunter game here and there, but never really got into them. But then
Yeah.
for whatever reason this game came out and I was just like fully on board. I'm like I want to do everything. Fight all
Just
the
in.
monsters. Yeah, I want to get all the best gear I can for my character, and yeah, it was a blast.
Hian brings up that Geralt is in it, and that's one of the things I thought was really cool was they brought Geralt because that makes sense. He's a monster hunter, right? That's what he does. He hunts monsters. And then also, from what I understand, Aloy from Horizon Zero Dawn made a uh, appearance in it, and there's also a tie-in with some of the DLC in Horizon Zero Dawn, which I thought was a really cool tie-in as well, because her character, that just makes total sense, right? So, and then Eric pointed out also that Final Fantasy 14, there was kind of a crossover with that as well. But
You can get Dragoon equipment and also fight the Behemoth monster, from Final Fantasy games, which makes total sense, right? It's Monster Hunter. Put some Final Fantasy monsters in there. And
right,
there's
just
even a if you go to the desert map, there's a little cactar that runs around, and you can like catch him in a net. It's really well thought out, silly tie-in content with other games.
yeah. But I mean, definitely a good pick. I own the game. I haven't dabbled too much in it yet. Just had a lot of stuff to play this past year, so. But I'm definitely going to get into it eventually. So definitely.
Yeah, apparently Iceborne's a really good expansion. I hadn't played that, but I
Well,
did play OG
I'm
game.
not going to show any Iceborne footage because last time I tried to, they flagged our channel. So sorry,
Come on,
Capcom. You're
What are you
missing
doing?
out on this free promotion with our millions of subscribers here. So, but yeah, I've heard it's really good. So, cool. So Eric and me picked Dragon Quest 11. You picked Monster Hunter World. So let's go with Eric here for 2019. Now, what is your game, your RPG of the year for 2019?
This is a game I was waiting for since 2015, and I was really skeptical if the game was going to be really good or not, because there had been some Kickstarter bombs like Mighty Number Nine, and
Mm.
the developers who are breaking away from their company to try to make a game that they weren't making anymore, and a lot of people are worried since this game kept getting delayed left and right constantly. But fortunately, the game turned out really damn good. And my 2019 pick is Bloodstained Ritual of the Night,
Great game.
a spiritual successor to the Castlevania exploration type games, the Metroidvanias. And they did not only did they bring what was great about Symphony of the Night to the game, they improved so many aspects of it. It really feels like a true Symphony of the Night 2. And not only that, like the story is pretty intriguing. The characters are really well designed. As you can see here, the art is really well done. The music in the game is fantastic. The bosses are really well designed, and it's a trial and error type of thing, but like in a really good way. Like you feel like you can beat this boss if you just take the little time to learn how he works a little more. And it's got a bunch of little tricks and secrets to find on top of it. There's cool post game content to get into to get the absolute best gear and 100% of the game. And it's 100% worth everyone's time. I believe the PC and PS4 versions are the definitive versions of the game. The Switch version, while it is much better now, is definitely the inferior version. The only good aspect to it is if you want to play it portable, because this version, the PC and PS4 version are 60 frames per second. That one's 30 frames per second, and the graphics were somewhat lowered, so the game doesn't look as great design wise, and
Right.
the times are a lot longer on Switch. So if you do want to play the game at its best, I do recommend playing at least this version or the PC version. But like if you were a fan of the Castlevania games in the past, this is a beautiful start to something that Konami's not doing anymore.
Let me just say that that's not my pick for this year, but I ended up picking it up kind of last minute because Eric spent so much time talking about his excitement for this game, and when I picked it up and I played it on the PS4, I loved it. Like I played that game for like easily like 3 or 4 weekends in a row. Like I had a lot of fun with it. I definitely got my money's worth out of it, and I really enjoyed it. It was definitely on my mind when I was trying to think for 2019. I could take more of those games. That was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. So, for me, well, Stan, let's go ahead and get your pick here.
Well, mine's easy because we've talked about it a lot already, and that's Dragon Quest XI-S.
Oh, on the Switch. Yeah.
Yes, that's the version that I've played. Still playing it right now, and yeah, I don't know what else can be said. It's just an excellent traditional, made like how they used to make them, JRPG, right?
It's your daddy's JRPG.
Yeah, pretty much. Like if like a lot of tropes like stuff bothers you, that may bother you with this game, but if it doesn't, or you're willing to look past it, there's just like an excellent, hero's journey, save the world type of experience in this game. Like that's what it's all about, and it knows what it's doing, and it does it very, very well.
Yeah.
Is pretty much the best kind of synopsis I can give of the game.
And if you buy the Switch version, although the graphics on the 3D version are not going to be quite as sharp as on the PS4 version, it does have the 2D version where they rebuilt the game as a Super Nintendo game, which is really cool. And there's some additional side quests and stuff. And they also took the orchestra version of the soundtrack, which is I like that version much better. I was okay with the MIDI soundtrack on the PS4, but it was a little weird, but I got used to it because, I grew up with that stuff. But once I heard the orchestra version of the soundtrack, I was like, man, this is fantastic. This is almost reason enough to replay this game. So
yeah, I really enjoy the orchestrated soundtrack version.
Yeah,
I played through the 2D version of the game. Absolutely fantastic. It's a great alternative way to play the game. I still highly recommend playing the 3D version first.
Hmm.
But if you're someone who wants to play through it a second time, I highly recommend trying the 2D version from
Yeah.
there, because it offers an interesting perspective. It shows you like how the cinematography would have been done if it was if you're limited to Super Nintendo. They don't try to they don't try too hard to modernize a lot of the aspects of it in 2D mode. So if you really like the Super Nintendo, like Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy games, then like this version, the 2D version, is definitely a worthy playthrough.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. You definitely want to experience the story sequences in 3D for the first time because, there's a lot of high quality cutscenes and stuff like that. That's really going to add a lot of weight to the story. In the 2D version, it's pretty cool, but sometimes the story sequences are not quite as dramatic as they are in the 3D version. So that's unfortunate, but still cool that we have that option and you can bounce back and forth and stuff like that. So definitely pretty cool. For me and for 2019, there was a lot of games for me to pick this year that I was trying to, kind of narrow down. And, at first I was like, well, I really like Fell Seal Arbiter's Mark, but I'm still working my way through that game. I haven't completely beaten that game. So I didn't feel comfortable picking that game. I also thought about picking The Outer Worlds because, that was the only game that, RPG fan, they sent that game to me like a week and a half early to record footage for the review. So it was a very surreal experience that I'll probably always remember because, there's all these dialogue trees and I was wanting to Google what I should pick and I couldn't
Yeah.
Google that because no one else had the game, So it was like, it was a very odd experience. I just kind of had to pick a choice and play the game and kind of like just stick with it. And that was definitely a great game to consider. But I know we were kind of joking about it in the comments, but I think I have to do it. I have to go Fire Emblem Three Houses. I mean, that game really surprised me when I bought it. I remember, you go back to our episodes around E3 time frame, I was really like trashing on this game. Like we were trashing on this. I think Eric was too. Like we were trashing on Fire Emblem Three Houses for like 4 months. Like just
I'll
like
still trash it. I didn't like it.
hey man, like I liked it. Like I'm okay. Let's get into it here. So I was trashing on this game because I was like, I like they weren't releasing anything about the game. I was like, this is a sure sign this is going to be a bad game. Well, I ended up getting it because it was getting great reviews day one. And the things I don't like about the game, I really don't like. I don't like the Persona elements. I don't like some of the cheesy anime like school setting. But outside of that, I really like the characters. But what really sold the game for me was the battles and the gameplay. Like I was so addicted to these battles. They would be like 45 minutes long, but like once one would end and like the story would continue, I would get the option to save and be like, I should probably go to bed right now because it's like 11:30 and I have to get up at 5. But I could do one more battle. Like I could go to work tomorrow with like 5 hours of sleep. I'll be okay. And then next thing I know, it's like 2:30 in the morning and I'm getting up at 5. Like I'm like in high school, but I'm, I've got a full-time job and I'm just like fried at work because I stayed up playing this damn video game. I was like,
video games, yeah.
dude, this was I had a lot of fun. I'm not gonna sit there and defend some of the every time I had to go around the school and run around and do all these like fetch quests and like help cook stuff and like fish. Like I got to the point where like that was very exhausting to me, but the actual story of the game I actually really enjoyed, and the gameplay itself is really, really good. And I really want to go back and I want to play some of the additional modes that they added, like the chaos mode or whatever they call it, that really like up the ante with the difficulty, because the game was a little easy, but it was still like, I don't know what it was about it, but it was still very satisfying to play. I think it was just the character build system, being able to individually level up all the stats and like all the different classes, and just it had a really good loop in that front where it was just very satisfying to level up your party. So I really, really enjoyed it on that front, and really makes me interested to play some other Fire Emblem games, because I've only ever played, I played one on like I think it was the Game Boy Advance. I was playing on an emulator. I was trying to remember, was this a Super Nintendo game or was this a Game Boy Advance game? But I think it was a Game Boy Advance release. But anyways, very light on my Fire Emblem knowledge, and this made me want to go play some of the other ones, because I understand they don't have the Persona elements, so I might enjoy those even more. Okay, Eric, go ahead. Oh, Stan.
Man,
Sorry.
it's this is, they're clearly going in the right direction, because this is what the Fire Emblem fans like. Everyone except me is
freaking Heian.
This is great. This is the direction they go. I don't agree. I think Fire Emblem was it was at its pinnacle when it came out for the GameCube and the Wii.
Yeah.
And with Fire Emblem Awakening, there were some things I didn't agree with. It was still a really good game. After that, it started going a little downhill for me. Started going way too JRPG, like Heian said. It's going way too waifu type of deal.
To clarify, I don't like that part of the game. So I think the fact that the other stuff was so enjoyable to me that I was able to kind of just grunt my way through the stuff I didn't like.
It's gone way too anime for my taste. And I definitely did not like the school setup and everything. I think that's one I couldn't get behind. I think at this point I'm actually kind of done with the Fire Emblem series. I like the remake of the Fire Emblem Gaiden that came out for 3DS, but every new title that they've made now I felt like it's just been deteriorating on me each time, and I think Three Houses was just the last straw for me. And I'm not saying that Nintendo should go out and change and make it like it used to be again, because this is clearly what people want. So if that's where the series wants to go to keep itself popular and relevant, that's fine. But I'm just done with the series at this point. I don't agree with the changes personally.
Here's the thing, though. When I look at some of the opinions of the game, like from all over the place, the biggest thing I see is people saying, I love the gameplay, I love the battles, I loved the stat system and like the progression system and the classes and stuff like that. But every time I was at the monastery and I was doing the, Persona stuff where I had to like help people with their problems and stuff like that, like everyone felt like that seemed to be just a detraction from the actual experience. And maybe there's some people out there that enjoyed that aspect, but it seems to me like a lot of the people that came in on the Fire Emblem Three Houses that didn't really experience the games prior, they all were right on track with you with, criticizing those elements of the game. Like I don't know where that support is for that part of the game, but I would be very happy to see them kind of like water that down a little bit more, because that part was just very slow. I was just glad that part ended up being optional and I could kind of skip it. You still need to do it a little bit, but you can reduce the amount of time you spend with that by a lot, I think. So
yeah, push it into the background.
Yeah,
at certain times. I was just gonna say about the gameplay. I haven't played Fire Emblem Three Houses, but I bought it for my friend, and he's played through it, and I've seen him kind of play parts of it. He explained the gameplay as kind of being like a reward loop, like you're constantly being rewarded for the various things that you are doing, like like you said, the stat choices or changing the classes of your characters and stuff. So I think that's probably the best thing the game has going for it, from what I understand. I haven't played it, but
yeah,
I've heard. I don't really like where the gameplay is the reward for dealing with a bunch of crap.
Yeah, well, the thing is, there's like multiple ways to reward the player, right? So it's not they provide a reward incentive to do a lot of the I keep calling them the Persona like elements, but it's not necessarily fair to Persona because I'm using it in a way where I'm like all the stuff I didn't like, the Persona stuff, but it's all the talking to people, cooking with people, and stuff like that. It does reward you for doing that, but there are other ways to progress your characters too, where if you don't have to do that stuff,
Mm.
you could just fight battles every time and teach school lessons and not do all that stuff too. So, anyways, yeah. So that's our RPGs of the last decade. Again, these are RPGs that we played. We haven't played all the games, and we took certain considerations, like we mentioned here that if we really liked a game but we haven't gotten all the way through it, or we haven't played enough of it for us to say, we kind of left it off the mark there. And I don't know, I'd be interested to hear what you all have to say. I do want to throw out again that if you were thinking about checking out the Netflix Witcher adaptation, I did a little review and some suggestions on how to approach the show. So I would strongly recommend check that out. I'm going to post a link in this comment thread right now, but I'm also going to post a link in the description. That way, if you're on audio version or whatever, you can go check that out. But I really appreciate if you guys go check that out, because it took a while to make. But yeah, next week we are going to be taking off. We're not going to be having an episode, but we will return the week after, and hopefully we'll finally figure out when we're going to do our Crisis Core discussion. So I'm still working my way through that. The nostalgia's kind of turning off on me. It's not as nostalgic as it was when I was initially playing it, but I'm still enjoying it. So I'm going to quit rambling here and just end the podcast here, but I guess we will see you all in about 2 weeks. So
see you next year. Yep.
Oh, next
Merry
year.
Christmas, everyone.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. Bye-bye. And Happy New Year.
And a Happy New Year.
All right, guys. Take it easy.
See you next time.
Yep.